Today we're going to finish R2-D2's leg, and I want to point out how forgiving yarn is. So this is my first attempt at R2-D2, not the one that I'm videoing for this pattern. Today we'll finish the leg, and then between now and next week, you will go ahead and finish 2 legs so that we'll be ready to start the body. My policy is better finished than perfect. There's a lot of things that I enjoy doing, and if I were so hung up on being perfect at it, I would stop altogether. So I want to show you on this little amigurumi some mistakes that I've made and how in the end it's just fine because I'm giving this to my grandkids who are going to love it. So let me show you mistake number 1 and how we will fix that. On this spot right here, I have a loop that is sticking up. This is why I always say yarn is very forgiving. You can simply move your crochet hook in there, pull that loop through to the inside, pull that loop to the inside, and then simply weave that end in. So what had happened on my R2-D2 is the end kind of came loose. I cut it a little bit short. But again, I can simply work it into my amigurumi, and you will no longer see that mistake. So yarn is very forgiving, and I don't want you to get hung up on making your amigurumi perfect. Another thing that I did on this amigurumi is when I got down to the base, her pattern has you decrease to a certain amount of stitches and then start an increase to make his base, so it goes in and then back out. However, as I was doing this, I was hung up on the stitch count and I could not get it right. So what I did is I simply put a stitch marker in and followed the pattern but didn't count my stitches. I simply decreased until I got back around to my stitch marker, then I increased until I got to my stitch marker, and so on until I closed up the end. So there's a lot of ways that you can adapt a pattern. Please don't get hung up on perfection, or this will be a very frustrating craft. Let's get started. Once you've hit round 10, we change it up a little bit, and you're going to do 2 single crochets and 1 crochet. So we're starting to build our leg a little bit wider. So you're going to just insert into the same stitch twice and single crochet. Then you're going to single crochet in the next one and repeat that process around. Moving on to round 12. Watch your pattern, but we're single crocheting. And remember, single crocheting will be written as SC. With round 13, we're continuing to build out our leg, make it a bit wider. So again, follow your pattern, but we start with a single crochet. And this is actually just very repetitive at this point. We single crochet, then we put 2 single crochets in 1 stitch. Anytime that you see something in brackets, it means that you repeat the process as many times as it shows outside of the bracket. You can tell that this is just a gentle increase. Started larger, went smaller, started larger, then start building it back out. And again, nothing fancy yet, no fancy stitches. Just a nice way to practice your single crochets and your tension. Now round 15 calls for stitching in the back loop only, which typically that would mean you'd pick this loop up right here. So here's your stitch and here's the back of it. But remember, we flipped our project right side out. So we're going to pick up the stitch in front, and it honestly just makes it easier to do. So you're going to, in the back loop only, you're just going to stitch, or again, front loop only. You're going to single crochet in 2 stitches, and then we're going to single crochet 2 together. So you're picking up just the front part of that stitch, make a single crochet, go to the next one, make a single crochet, and then in the next one you're going to insert, pull your, or wrap your hook and pull it through, go to the next stitch, front loop only, insert, wrap your hook and pull through all 3. It is so much easier to work in a front loop than a back loop. So by flipping our project, we're accomplishing the same thing that she has you doing, but it is easier to work in the front loop. Now we're starting to close up our opening. Make sure that your eye is still, or yes, the stub of your eye is still poking out. We are now on round 16, and we're going to start stitching 2 together all the way around. There we go. On this round, you are not using back loop only. You're using the entire stitch. You're going through the entire stitch. Now we're going to cut a length of yarn and we're going to fasten it off. So fasten off. You just pull your stitch yarn right through that last stitch to fasten it. Now for the next part of the leg, we're going to go ahead and take the eye and put it face down so that we're working on the opposite side. This leg is going to attach to the body in this manner. So this will be where the body comes out. So we're going to sew 3 vertical stripes right in here according to the pattern. And we're using our blue yarn for that. So with the blue yarn, we're going to insert into the leg. So I feel like I'm over one too far. I want to be directly opposite. And again, she doesn't specify, but I think it looks best if you're going to go in and out of the same hole. So we want to come down to where our leg starts to bulge out, and we want to insert again right in and up through the same hole we just came out of. We're just making 3 stripes right here. So again, just in and out the same hole, and you don't want to make it too tight because you don't want to pull the leg tight. So we want to maintain the same shape with the leg. Back one more time, she suggests 3 lengths of yarn. So we just have 3 lengths of yarn. And again, if you don't like this look, you can certainly spread your yarn out through 3 different stitch holes. I like it a bit better when it is closer together. And now we're going to take a little bit of stuffing and stuff into the leg, and then we're going to wrap our yarn across the opposite direction. So with some stuffing, just grab a little bit and push it right through, trying to avoid the yarn that we're working with. And you can push this down into the tip with anything, the end of your crochet hook, your finger. I happen to have this thing called a purple fang, and it pushes it down nicely. Chopsticks work, really whatever you have on hand. Just going to lightly stuff our leg. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you'll notice that I did a cute little lamb for my granddaughter using Funky Friends patterns. And I used cut up memory foam to stuff that. It was really fun because it gives it a real nice, soft, cushiony feel. However, for these, it's very messy and it sticks to everything. You really need to have a roller handy, one of those masking tape rollers handy to get it all out. But I feel like, I thought about trying it with R2D2, but I honestly feel like this soft polyfill stuffing is better. And then we're just going to take and stitching through the leg. I love these needles. We're just going to stitch across horizontally across our vertical. And I'm just going in underneath at my nearest stitch, coming up underneath the other side. I love these needles, that's what I was going to say. And just pulling it through and just making that vertical stitch across there. That one seems a little wide. Can you see I went a little wide, so I'm going to come back in before I make that final stitch. And each time I'm grabbing some white yarn underneath the vertical blue so that it's going to nicely attach this blue to the leg, and it just ties that blue yarn off nicely. And again, if you didn't leave it a long enough tail, to do this, go ahead and pull it out and start again. This is your creation. I honestly don't feel like I left a long enough tail. Pull that out a little bit. Probably going to be wishing I'd gone a little bit longer with the tail of my yarn. So you just want to make it look pleasing to you. There is no right or wrong way to do this. Because if you get caught up in the details, then this craft is not going to be fun. And then I'm going to take one last stitch here underneath my blue. Then I'm just going to pull the blue out through the bottom. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and cut the tail. Push both of those tails inside. Remember, we left this long piece of yarn when we fastened off. We're going to go ahead and thread our needle now with the white yarn. And we're just going to stitch around to close this hole up. So I'm just going in one side. Actually, I'm going to pull that tight. Going in one side and out the other. Just doing a nice little stitch to try to make sure that the bottom is flat. Remember, this will be the top that's attached to our body. So this is the bottom of R2-D2's arm. Just keep weaving in and out. Now's a good time if some of the holes of your yarn are a little bigger than you like. You can kind of weave those in and hide that. Yarn is a very forgiving craft, or medium, I guess, to use for a craft. You can hide a lot of mistakes. It's not at all as precise as quilting, where you want your corners to be perfectly matched up, which, if you've seen any of my quilting projects, I never seem to do that. But again, I love the craft of crafting. It brings me joy. And I don't get too caught up in how perfect it should be. Okay, I think that's looking really good, nice and flat. Now I'm just going to take a few more stitches, but I'm going to weave up through the leg a little bit to make sure that the end of my yarn does not come out. Just hide it the best that you can, whatever you think looks good. And then one last stitch, and we're just gonna pull that a little bit tight, snip it off close, and the end will disappear right inside. So that is one leg. I want you to go ahead and do the next leg so that you have matching legs, and then we will close this video out and come back again next week when we'll begin working on the body.